If I remember very well, the processes for strengthening system for recognition of prior learning in Mauritania almost started at the same time as the time that this started in Kenya. And we've been very instrumental in that, and imagining such successes that are happening in other countries and coming back to Kenya, it's of great happiness that to see now we have a policy framework that is existent and a policy framework that is going to sort out matters in terms of transition from informality to formality. We base our approaches on recommendations. The first recommendation being the recommendation 204. Most of session partners are conversant with this recommendation. The recommendation that looks at transition from informality to formality, both of enterprises and workers. And why do we transition enterprises from the informality to formality? To benefit from some of these services, government services, be it financial services, and even microfinance services that are available, so that they are able to be upgraded. One thing that is surprising enough when it comes to Kenya, we have an education system that implements competency-based curriculum, dual approaches to training. For dual approaches to training to be successful and effective, enterprises and workplaces are quite important. So we find ourselves using these same enterprises, going to the Geofrey sector, attaching trainees, but we are not cognizant of the fact that these enterprises need to be built. These enterprises need to be upgraded and need to be strengthened to a level that they become better workplaces. And how do we do this? By this transition to formality. By certifying the mastercraft person who are our trainers within these spaces. The ILO derives its work from the decent work agenda. Decent work agenda looking at employment opportunities, the work that we do in public employment services to ensure that we don't train for ourselves as institutions, but we train for the labor market. We look at what issues around social protection in terms of spaces that we work in terms of the health protection, the social security for our employees and our workers. We look at the work and life balances in terms of the decent work agenda. But then this fits in well with recommendation number 95, which talks about HRD, and this goes to the institution that looks at human resource. And under the human resource, we apply ourselves in strengthening the role of training, education system, training systems towards lifelong learning. Stanley mentioned it very well, that RPL is about lifelong learning. One, transition to the labor market for the Geofrey sector. Two, in the formal system, SICAN is working on the same. Lifelong learning, we are bringing you back to the national qualification framework, which is there, it's being implemented. So there's a lot that we need to do in terms of creation of awareness in this, and COVID-19 has taught us a lot. We did an assessment with the Ministry of Labor on the informal sector, impact of COVID-19 to the informal sector. Jobs were lost, and these jobs were lost majorly in the informal sector. The informal sector, there is no certification. So these people who are losing jobs cannot transition into an employment opportunity. A good example you mentioned, somebody is looking for a job but doesn't have a certificate to show for it. And luckily, the truth is that employers speak to certification. As it may, we would think that, we have the informal sector with these skills, but then when such scenarios and pandemics like COVID-19 hit us, we realize that, our labor force is highly affected. Because 83% of people employed in Kenya are in the informal sector. We don't have jobs in informal employment. There are no opportunities there. So we have transitioned to that. But then how do we build these sectors to respond to it? So my thinking behind this, and then I'm just going to be forward-looking, because the support that has gone towards recognition of prior learning and the checking of boxes has really been great and excellent. And I'm just going to be forward-looking and looking at how the ILO will play a role in pushing this forward and even supporting the rollout of recognition of prior learning. Check number 1 is on the framework. We already have the the legal framework that supports this initiative. A policy framework is in place. And with this policy framework, what then do we need to do? We need to start thinking about the correlation in the development policy, the correlation of this policy in the national employment policy. We need to be speaking to the Ministry of Labor, speaking to the employment agencies like the National Employment Agency. How do we bring them into the loop to ensure that this is done? We look at the institutional framework, but not on the role. We have already taken care of that in the roles. But now we are looking at the capacity development within this. We mentioned the massive open online course that the ILO has developed, which is supporting so many other countries to be able to create opportunities, to be able to strengthen capacities within the country on recognition of prior learning. So we have that, but then at the same time, we ask ourselves, what kind of stakeholders do we want to bring on board? The only thing that I always say, Mr. DG, we've not done, and we've been speaking about this, is our role in supporting even the media to understand this process. Communication is going to be key. But if you don't capacity the media, the message that goes out there will be wrong. And this can easily water down the whole process. So we bring them in on board and speak to them. Let them understand when we speak about recognition of prior learning, these are the aspects that we are looking at, so that the message is taken out well. Social dialogue, quite important. It is what the ILO is, anchored on. When we speak to our social partners, it's all about social dialogue, bringing people together, walking the same walk. We don't need to be working in silos. We need to enhance social dialogue, and this will be very beneficial, especially when it comes to ghosting and financing of RPM. Because it has so many stakeholders are involved in this recognition of prior learning, and as such, all stakeholders have interests at stake. So we need to enhance that dialogue, and it takes us to a level where we speak about it in our daily, engagements, so that people get to understand that this is my role as TVETA, this is my role as TVET, as ILO, this is the role I'm going to play in this. As a verifier and assessor, this is the role. Because after everything is done, it all comes back to the cost. How do we finance this process? How are we able to even share this cost among ourselves? So, and that speaks to even the quality of the process at the end of the day. Because once one stakeholder their interests are not able to be taken care of, then there becomes a gap at the end of the, when it comes to performance and being able to honor to their responsibilities. So quality will be important, and this will be solved by this social dialogue, because at the end of the day, when you speak about this, it enhances, it builds the trust even with the employers. This kind of certification that we bring in, we want people to be able to recognize that somebody who's gone through RPM is as equally as competent, or an RPM certificate is as competent as any other certificate from the formal system. And the idea is, we are not going to have two parallel certificates, it's going to be one and the same thing. And as much as possible, get the employers also to be onboarded to the financing model that we will choose on the same. And this also speaks to what we are planning as the ILO. We realize that, there's different costing centers in all qualification awarding institutions. So we are trying as much as possible to work with KMQA to devise a differentiated cost for RPL and understand the nitty-gritties that go into RPL costing. So that this is an advisory that goes to the ministry, and the ministry knows how to take it forward. So it's going to look at the cost sharing model, it's going to look at the financing models that are available, and it's also going to look at what are the roles of every partner towards financing of RPM. And to just come to my end, I would say as the ILO, we are always available for technical support, and the technical support that goes into this is in terms of even enriching the policy further as we go by, because I know this is the first version of the policy. We are going to have iterations through the learning process. We are going to have iterations of the tools that have already been developed. So we remain committed to ensure that the recognition of prior learning policy framework and systems are rolled out within the country. I would stop here and really thank KQA for agreeing to partner with ILO in this and making us an equal partner in the recognition of prior learning process. Thank you.